The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 8th chapter. Jesus said to the Jewish authorities who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." And they answered him, "We are descendants of Abraham, and we have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free?" And Jesus answered them, "Very truly, I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The son has a place there forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and mercy are yours from the triune God. Amen. And happy Reformation Day. If you don't know about Reformation Day is this day that we celebrate Martin Luther nailing the 95 Theses onto the door. Very exciting. It's kind of the start of the Protestant movement, which we get our name from, the Lutheran Church. So it's a big day for us. But I might not have mentioned it to you one or two times, but I did not grow up Lutheran. I am still relatively new around here, and these sort of special Lutheran festivities. I didn't go to Luther League growing up or study the Small Catechism for 3 years of confirmation. I didn't watch the movies with the guy with the bowl cut and the whole thing. I didn't sing "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God" or any of that until like 5 years ago. And what that means for me is that they hold zero nostalgia for me. They are not a part of my culture. I didn't grow up that way. I don't care about them like that. But I do love them. I love all of it. It is the deep theology full of grace and mystery and the cross that is behind all of that stuff that keeps me coming back. To be clear, my very first dive into Luther was when I was in my second year of seminary, already in an ordination track in a different denomination, but really not having a great time with it because it didn't feel right to me. Something was off. And I read in an introduction to theology class, the Heidelberg Disputation, which sounds exciting. And it's because it is. It's awesome. It rocked my world. It changed everything for me. I'm not being sarcastic. I found out that there is a God that I didn't have to climb my way to, that my own accomplishments wouldn't somehow create a ladder to heaven. I couldn't be good enough or bad enough or smart enough or strong enough or clever or funny or any of that. I got divine love just because. Through the cross, through engagement with my world, I would see Jesus in real ways. And more than that, I was already loved. I was enough for God already. A year later, I was enrolled in a seminary class, now fully committed to being a Lutheran pastor, after discovering this kind of God was out there for me and out there for the whole world, including you. And I was sitting in an introduction to Lutheran theology class, reading over the Small Catechism for the first time. To be very clear, everybody in the class was very familiar with this already, having grown up with it and watching those movies with the bowl cut And the professor started talking about grace and mercy, and what it means to worship a God of paradox, where I didn't need to have all of the answers because there was no answer to something so perfect, so complete as the love of God, but that it frees me. If the Son has set you free, you are free indeed. To go out into the world and love with abandon, where I can't somehow mess up or fail in loving enough, because God has already loved enough for everybody. And it won't matter to God if I fail. I won't earn a demerit on my record because it is clean. And they're in that classroom with all of those very experienced Lutherans who had grown up with this theology their whole life and maybe taken it a little for granted. I remember going wild about it. Stood up in class and clapped my hands. I went nuts. Because despite growing up in the mainline Protestant church my whole life, this is not the God that I knew. Despite hearing about God's love in church my whole life, I guess I just assumed it was for somebody else. But in that seminary classroom, I was meeting grace for the first time. I finally understood. I finally felt what was only a concept to me. It was right there. It was in my chest. And it was free grace. Free. Free. Free as Halloween candy. And I wept. And the teacher was up there talking about whatever they were talking about. And she asked me about it. And I told them that I had grown up in Minnesota my whole entire life. I had gone to school with Lutherans all my life. I had even gone to their churches to visit. And that this is the first time that I ever understood that how grace works. And I asked them why they didn't tell me about it sooner. Because there were so many hard times for me, and this would have really helped. Friends, a mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing, our helper, he amid the flood of mortal ills prevailing. Though our world changes, though the church changes, though the powers of sin and deceit still batter our ramparts and try and convince us that death will have the last word, that it's all meaningless, that there is no hope, that there is no way out of our strife, we worship a God that has conquered the grave for us through a cross. We worship a Messiah that emptied a tomb and broke the hold of death. We follow a spirit that makes a fool of the world's power and reveals something greater than hate, pride, and shame, and it is love. It is grace, it is mercy. These are the foundations that we stand on. On this, we should not move. Let us go out and spread the good news. There is a world hungry and desperate to hear it. God's arms are open and God's love is free. Amen.